Hello friends! Today we're going to work on what's called our Apple Still Life project. This project is made with oil pastels, but you can use colored pencils if you don't have oil pastels. We have some vocabulary words, so please get a piece of paper and a pencil and write these down. We have the title of our project, which is called Apple's Still Life. Now, what is a still life? Well, a still life are objects that are set up. An artist will paint them or draw them, and it's made up of still objects, which means the objects do not move. These objects can be anything. It can be fruits, it can be vases, it can be lamps, it can be fabrics, it can be absolutely anything. And you will see a lot of artworks that artists have done of still life objects. Our second word is 2D or two-dimensional. Two-dimensional means flat. So for instance, this paper is flat. Well, it's technically not completely flat because it does have a bit of depth here. But for our purposes, we're going to define 2D as flat. The reason is because our project is going to be made on a flat piece of paper. And so we're going to learn about 2D or two-dimensional. Our next word is 3D or three-dimensional. Now, three-dimensional means depth or around. And what does that mean? That means that you can actually walk behind or around an object. So for instance, this jar here that I have, if I were to set this up here, then I could actually look to the sides. I could even turn it around and see the back. So this is considered a three-dimensional object, whereas this project would be considered two-dimensional because it's done on a flat piece of paper. So 2D is flat and 3D means something that shows depth or something that you can see around or behind. Our fourth word is overlapping. And overlapping means something that's in front and behind. So in our project here with apples, we're going to be showing overlapping. So these two apples are in front of this green apple. This green apple is behind. So these three apples show overlapping. And our fourth and last word, our fifth word is composition. And composition means set up. So our apples have a composition here that's arranged with three apples on top of a tabletop. And this was the way that I composed or set up my artwork. So we have 5 words here. We have Apple Still Life, 2D, 3D, overlapping, and composition. Okay, so on a new sheet of white paper and with your pencil, let's start drawing our Apple Still Life project. I'm holding my paper horizontally or left to right. Horizontal is left to right and vertical is up and down. I'm holding my paper horizontally. Now, I'm going to start by drawing my first apple. I'll start with the red one on the left. Now, if you look at apples, they're not perfectly round in shape. They're actually a little wider on the sides and flatter on the tops and bottoms. and this apple is facing or leaning more towards the left side. So I'm going to start by drawing my red apple, and I'm going to start drawing in a sketching mode, which means I'm drawing very, very, very lightly in case I want to erase. And so that's the first step, is that I don't want to grip my pencil very hard, but I want to hold my pencil more towards the end of the eraser. That way I'm forced to draw more lightly. And I'm going to start, I'm not even drawing anything on my paper yet, but I'm making this circular motion with my hand because I want to start with a sketching mode, which means I want to try to find the shape that I'm happy with. So in sketching mode and with a circular motion and warming my hand up, I'm going to make these circle motions, and then eventually I'm going to press my pencil down very, very lightly on the paper and then draw some circles very, very lightly. Maybe you can't even see that, but that's the whole point, is that I don't really want to see it yet because I haven't decided yet exactly how my apple will look. So I'm in sketching mode. And then I'm going to go around and make it a little bit darker. Now I know apples are not perfect circles, so after I have this round shape, then I'm going to go back and change the shape of the apple a little bit. The apple is lying a little bit on its left side this way, and the top is over here. So the top is going to be a little bit flatter. So I'm going to make a little flat shape here, actually a slight curved line. And then I'm going to go around and make this side and this side a little bit wider. Then towards the bottom, it flattens out a little bit again. Now I'm doing the left side, and still in sketching mode with light lines, I'm going around and making the sides of my apples a little bit, the side of my apple a little bit wider. Okay, so this is the general shape that I have of my red apple, leaning towards the left. I'm pretty happy with this shape here. Okay, and I've lightly gone back and darkened up my lines just a little bit. Now I'm going to draw the core or the stem of the apple, which will come out this way a little bit, and then finish drawing the top, which curves out a little bit like that. An apple is actually quite bumpy and lumpy in its shape, so I'm going to go around and define it a little bit and make it a little bit wider here on the sides and a little bit on the bottom. There. All right, so that takes care of my left apple, my red apple, and I'm going to call that my Honeycrisp apple. My Honeycrisp apple is kind of reddish and orangish and yellowish. It actually has many colors and shapes, many colors within the apple. All right, so next I'm going to move on to my green apple, which is in the center, and this is going to be my Granny Smith apple. Granny Smith apples are green. All right, so that's my first apple, my Honeycrisp apple. Now I'm going to start with my green apple, and in sketching mode again, I haven't even drawn anything yet. I'm just warming my hand up and making the circular motion. Okay, so now I'm going to start to put the pencil to the paper and draw a very, very light circle in sketching mode of my Granny Smith apple. Okay, now this apple is sitting straight up and down like this. So I know the top part is going to be a little bit flatter. The sides are going to bulge out a little bit more, and the bottom will be a little bit flatter too. So I'm going back in and I'm making my lines a little bit darker. Now this apple is overlapping this one. it's in front of my green apple. So I'm going to erase this line here. Because they overlap, you can't see this part of the green apple. So I will erase that line to indicate overlapping. All right, and then the core or the stem comes out like this. The bottoms and the top are a little bit flatter, and the sides bulge out a little bit. All right, so that's my Granny Smith apple. My next apple here on the right is my Golden Delicious apple. This apple is lying on its side, and the top is facing the right side. Again, I'm going to go in sketching mode and warm up my hand and make circular motions. Now I'm going to start to add pencil to the paper and draw a circular motion, circular shape here to indicate my Golden Delicious apple. Now it's facing to the right, so this side, the top is going to be a little bit flatter, and the sides are going to be a little bit wider, like this. And then since this apple is overlapping the green one, I'm going to erase that line. Like that. The stem comes out here like this. There. All right. So I've sketched my 3 apples. Oh, I'm sorry. This apple is in front of this one. So this line needs to be erased. Go ahead and switch that because my Golden Delicious apple is in front of my Granny Smith. Okay. Now it's overlapping properly. Okay. Now I have my 3 apples. Now I need to finish my composition or setup or layout of my apples, and I'm going to place it on top of a tabletop. So I need a horizontal line going in the background. So I'm starting here, making a horizontal line, then skipping over or jumping over the apples and continuing my tabletop on the right side like that. Okay, now we're going to fill in our apples with colors. So we'll start with our Honeycrisp apple. So I'm going to grab my yellow, orange, red, and a deeper orange. So I have a range here from light to dark. And I'm also going to need white. Apples are multicolored. There are many colors in our apples, not just red for the red apple. So I'm going to use all these colors. So go ahead and grab light to dark, yellows, oranges, and reds. Okay, I'm going to start with my yellow first, my lightest yellow. And I'm going to fill in the whole apple with yellow. Fill it in with oil pastels. If you don't have oil pastels, you can use your colored pencils for this. The blending might be a little bit different. It might not be exactly the same way, but do your best and use whatever materials you have. It'll work. Okay, so I filled in my apple yellow. Now I'm going to take my light orange and I'm going to, on top of the yellow, I'm going to start to fill in the right side here. The light is shining in from this side. My window's over here. So the lightest part of my apple is going to be here, and the darkest part will be here. So that'll make more sense in just a minute. So I'm filling in this part here with some orange. right on top. And then I'm going to take my dark orange and then start to work here on the left side. Because the light is shining in here from the right side, this part will be the lightest in color, and then this part here, which is furthest away from the light, will be the darkest part of the apple. So I'm starting with my dark orange. If you don't have dark orange, then you can just go right ahead and start with your red here. Okay? You don't have to use exactly the same colors that I am. You just use whatever reds and oranges and yellows you have. Okay? All right. So I filled in the left side a deep orange. And then I'm going to go in with my darkest red and fill in that bottom left side with my deep red here. Okay, so now my red apple is a little bit, the lines and the colors are not blending well yet, so I want to take my yellow and go back into my red apple and mix all the colors together. I'm taking my yellow and going on top of the red and the orange. And the oil pastels are oily, so they will blend together nicely. Like that. Go back in on this side to make this side a little bit smoother as well. Okay. Now I have all this stuff here stuck to my oil pastel, so I can take a tissue and I can just wipe it off. I'm gonna clean up my paper. Okay, so now it's blending in nicely here. Okay, now the light is shining in from this side, so that means the highlight from the light will be over here. So I'm going to take my white and I'm going to add a highlight here on the right side. And this highlight will make the apple look three-dimensional, or like a real apple. And highlights and shadows will do that for your artwork, because we don't want to make an apple that looks flat. We want to make an apple that looks real and round, because apples are roundish. So I'm adding a highlight, and this makes my apple look three-dimensional. All right, so I think I want to blend it out a little bit better. So I'm taking my light orange and I'm going to go back in and blend in my orange part a little bit better. You can go back and forth with your colors and make your colors blend in more smoothly until you're happy with it. Okay, now I'm going to take my yellow again, and I'm just going to go in here and blend out this area. Okay, there. All right, so I have my highlight and I have my shadow area here. I want to make this part even darker. So I'm going to take my purple, or if you don't have purple, you can use black. And I'm just going to add a tiny bit here to the bottom to make this part darker. So this will make my apple look even more three-dimensional. and roundish, not flat, not 2D, but 3D. If you don't have purple, you can use blue, black. You can even use brown. Anything that's darker than the red will work. There. Okay. So as I'm adding these highlights and shadows, as my apple is looking more and more three-dimensional. Okay, now let's move on to the green apple, or the Granny Smith. Now the green apple is also multicolored. It has yellows, light green, medium green, and dark green. So once again, I'm going to start with my light yellow, color in the whole thing here. This is my green apple, but I'm starting with yellow because if you look at a green apple, there's probably some yellow in there too sometimes. Okay, so I filled in my green apple. Now I'm going to move to my light yellow. So I'm starting with my lightest and I'm going darker. Now the highlight is over here, so I want to make sure that this part stays light. So I'm adding my green over here. And filling it in. Like that. Okay. Now I have my light green. Now I want to transition to my dark green. So I have a darker green here, and I'm going to add my darker green to the bottom left here, because this is the part that's furthest away from the highlight. So this needs to be the darkest part of my apple. All right, good. Now I want to make everything smoothed out and blended a little bit better. So I'm going to take my yellow and I'm going to go back in and go over these areas and mix them in together so that everything's blended in nicely. Like that. Okay, and now I want to add my highlight. So with your white, I'm going to make this part just like I did here, the right side and the top white here, and add a highlight because my light is shining in here from the right side. This highlight will make my green apple look three-dimensional. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit more shadow, just like I did over here. I'm going to take, I don't have a dark green. Well, actually I do. I have a dark green here. If you don't have dark green, you can use brown or black or blue even. You can use anything that's darker than this color here, this medium green. Okay, so now I have my darkest part here, I have my lightest part here. I want to transition the colors a little bit better. So I'm taking my light green and I'm going to go in to my area here and blend all my colors nicely. There. The nice thing about oil pastels is that they're very oily and they can blend in very nicely. Kind of like an oil painting. All right, so there's my Granny Smith apple with my highlight and my shadow. Okay, let me fix the top here a little bit. Okay, very good. Now I'm going to work on my Golden Delicious apple. Golden Delicious apple is golden in color, so it's yellowish and orangish, light orange. So again, I'm going to take my very light yellow here. This one is my lightest yellow in my palette, my oil pastel box, and it's kind of like a lemon yellow. You can use whatever yellow you have. Just use a light colored one, okay? And then I'm gonna fill the whole Golden Delicious apple with my light yellow, like that. And then I'm going to get darker and darker, so I'm gonna find my light orange. It's actually kind of like a light yellow. And remember, this is gonna be the lightest side of my apple. So I'm gonna start adding the darker colors to the left side here. Just like that, right on top of the yellow. And then I'm going to add a darker orange. So I have this one. And I'm gonna add this to the bottom part here to add that shadow. Because I don't want flat apples, I want round apples. I want 3D apples, not 2D apples. Okay. Now I'm gonna take my white and add a highlight here on the right side, just like I did with my Granny Smith and my Honey Crisp. And add the white highlight here. Now I'm going to take my light orange or light yellow or whatever you have, if you have a light yellow, light orange. And I wanna make all of this a little bit smoother. So I'm gonna take it and go right on top of everything and just blend it all together nicely. See that? When I take my light orange and go right on top of the yellow and the orange, everything mixes in nicely like this. Okay, good. And my last step for my Golden Delicious will be to add a darker orange to the bottom here so that I can make like a shadow. Now that I want to go even darker than that. So if you have like a light brown or medium brown, you can use that. I have this light brown here, but that's not even dark enough, so I'm going to change that to this brown here. Add that in very lightly here to the bottom. There. Okay, now I think I am finished with my apples. Now I want to take my black oil pastel. If you don't have black, you can use purple or dark blue. And I'm going to outline everything. So I'm going to start and go around all of my apples. And make sure you have the overlapping right, like this. I'm going to go in and make the stems. Outline everything. Okay, very good. Now I'm going to outline my tabletop as well. My horizontal line is here so that my apples are not just floating around in space. I want to ground my apples in their composition or setting on top of a tabletop. Okay, now my next step, or your next step, will be to add the background. I'm going to add, I'm choosing blue for the top, and I will choose a light color for the bottom. I'm going to choose this beige for the bottom and a blue for the top. And I'm just going to fill in the background. because if I leave everything white like this, to me it looks unfinished. If you fill in all of the white space, then your work will look finished and more professional. So all you need to do is to fill in the background, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So I have here, this one I filled in the background with watercolor paint. You can use watercolor paint if you have it, or if you don't have it, you can just use the oil pastels and fill in the background. Okay, boys and girls, so we learned about our apple still life. We learned about two-dimensional, three-dimensional, overlapping, and composition. All right, boys and girls, I look forward to seeing all of your wonderful work, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.